thank you so much for joining us today. We
Yep.
really appreciate it. And we're going to do the same thing that we've done before, where we share a little, I ask you a few questions and have it more of a conversation. So, and I don't know, a lot of people might not realize that your career didn't start in law enforcement. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your background and really how you came to do the work that you do?
Sure. First of all, I want to congratulate everybody for continuing these Zoom meetings. I know it's challenging for all of us, and I've had enough of them to last a lifetime at this point. So I'm looking forward to the FaceTime with everybody. And I know most people in leadership. Oh, whoever, Joshua, that donut looks really good, man. You're going to have to hide that. Sorry to point you out, but I just saw you popping that good old maple bar in there. But yeah, I didn't start in law enforcement. I when I was getting out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like a lot of people, getting out of high school. So I started working in the building trades and was actually looking to be an architect. But when I found out how long that was going to take to get a license and then work as an apprentice for someone, I continued in the building trades and went to vocational school and started working for a home manufacturing company in Tacoma. We were an international home manufacturing company where I worked for 12 years, creating custom design homes, the design aspect, doing the drafting, design, marketing, research, and got to travel around the country and worked for them for about 12 years before they went out of business. It's a cyclical business, and so I went to work for a competitor actually that bought the business at the time. And then my passion for law enforcement was actually my first choice when I was getting out of school. However, it was not a good time for young men or women to get into law enforcement. The Vietnam War was coming to a close. There was a lot of unrest and protests similar to what we're going through today. And so I didn't go into law enforcement, but all the experiences that I had in the building trades, working as a supervisor, working with people, working in marketing fields, really gave me a lot of experience and skills to negotiate the law enforcement field when I got into it. So I applied for the sheriff's office and was hired in 1984, and had many opportunities here to move from being a line deputy to a sergeant, K-9 officer, Marine Services. Was appointed by Pat Jones to a civil position, and then appointed by Sheriff Boyer to another position. And then fortunately, I was able to be elected to sheriff 6 years ago. And so I've had a lot of opportunities to engage and be a part of the community. And everyone that's in our agency recognizes how important community is, and we try to emphasize that at every opportunity we get.
So when you think about community building then in your role, and you mentioned it, how is it important?
Well, I like the idea of the lady in Harriet's video that was talking about a common unity, and really made me, in our breakout rooms, we talked a little bit about that too. I'm going to have to redefine what community really is. I got a lot more communities than I thought. There's communities throughout Kitsap
Yes.
County, and that's what I think of when I think of community, is the citizens that we serve. But there's also the Leadership Kitsap community, the community of the sheriff's office, and even in our own office, we have different communities, whether it's the patrol division, the detectives, support services, or the jail personnel. So there's a lot of communities that we serve and get involved with. But my role as the sheriff is primary about community building. And I'm pretty much the spokesman, if you will, for trying to bring that role together for what we do and what we do for the communities that we serve. And something I think that I always go back to and share with a lot of community presentations I make is that Robert Peel, back in, 1800s, talked about what law enforcement really is. And he says, the police are the public and the public are the police. And that, we are part of the public, and the public is who we are and who we serve. But he also goes on to adding to that comment that the police are the members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. So he expands that to say that not only are the police officers are the ones that are doing this work on a regular basis, but every citizen has a responsibility to be a part of that welfare and that safety within our community. I often say that public safety, I believe, is a public responsibility. It's not just a law enforcement responsibility. All of us have a role to play in making sure that our communities. Um, my role as a sheriff also includes spending a lot of time of dealing with on authentically advocating. You've heard about authenticity, and you've heard about advocating. So I spend a lot of time having to be being authentic and advocating for what we need to get the job done in the community, and that means defining what our role is, defining what the public's role is, where we fit within county government, and how we need to have partnerships to get our job done, and how we need to do our responsibility, but also have partnerships with other people to help us get that job done. We just cannot do it alone, and we really need our communities to not only support us, but also be a part of our community to get that job done.
Well, and with those partnerships, it says the mission of the Sheriff's Office states that through our vision and values, we are dedicated to providing quality public safety services in partnership with our diverse communities. So what are some of the day-to-day activities that you encourage within the Sheriff's Office to build those partnerships that you mentioned?
Well, one thing we did a few years ago when I came into office is that we sat down with a variety of groups within our organization and outside our own community, and in the citizens and the people in the community that we serve, brought us all together and worked on a strategic plan. We had to have a purpose, we had to have a plan, identify who we are and what our roles are, and so that we're all moving in the same direction. Everybody had an idea of where we thought we should be going, who we were, and it helped us to bring that together and come with a common, unified direction to energize everyone as best we can, and also to focus on using the limited resources and with time and resources that we had. But in the community, and what we do here at the office is having to remind people who we work for, what is our purpose. That I'm elected by the citizens, but the citizens are paying our job. That doesn't mean that they're always right. We sometimes get people say, well, I pay your taxes, I pay for your job, and so I'm going to tell you what to do. And that's not always the best way of receiving our information. Everybody gets in this work with a heartfelt and a purpose to help others, to really make a difference. That's why they get into this job. They come with a purpose, but they also like to drive fast, solve crime, and put people in jail. That's kind of a benefit of the job. But they really do have a heart to serve others, and sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to remember that. So I oftentimes have to remind them that in spite of the media and the things that we hear in the public today, that we are doing a good job, we are supported by our community, and we have to ignore a lot of the rhetoric and the distractions and focus on what we need to do every day. It's a dangerous job, it's a dirty job, and the people that we have here are willing to do it every day. So I'm really proud of the people that we have.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do. I think one of the things that you just mentioned that's really important for the leaders that are on this call is, I remember when you were going through your strategic plan, because Leadership Kitsap was one of your community partners that received a survey and were asked input. And I think that's unique in that you're for other organizations maybe to think when they're doing their strategic plan if you're serving a community, to reach out to and ask those questions to your community. And so of your partnerships, and what are some of those key community partnerships that are really making the difference, you think, in the health and safety of our community?
Well, one thing that I strive to do is to try to get people to spend some time volunteering or being a part of another community, whether it's Leadership Kitsap, or it's the 4-H, or the Special Olympics, or the YWCA. Got to throw that in there for you, Harriet. Or supporting GEMS. There's all kinds of a lot of good stuff going on in Kitsap County, and that's what I think is unique about our communities, is that there's a lot of things that are good, a lot of things that are going well, and that's why we're not having some of the problems that we're having, or you see across the nation. But key partnerships are those that I have my personal interests, and so I'm involved in those, but I also try to connect with other community agencies that can partner with us to help us get our job done, as well as us maybe being a partner to help them get their job done. I'm on the Kitsap Mental Health Services Board, and so I'm doing everything I can and every opportunity to educate them on what I need and what we need to do our job. I was with Harriet on the YWCA board for several years, working with domestic violence and being a spokesman for that group, which helps us. The more that we're able to let people know what their responsibilities are and what they need to be doing to overcome domestic violence, it's going to help us not have to respond to these type of calls. Partnering with banks to make sure that the banks are safe and they're setting up their protocols and procedures to keep their people safe. School districts, where we have our student resource officers in there to help build positive relationships with students to be responsible citizens and adults in the future, and help solve some of those problems before they may occur. So anyone that we may be connected with, we try to partner with so we can help them and they can help us in our mission to keep our community safe. Again, it's everybody's part, but we need to take the lead to help show them how to do that.
So what is your advice, some leadership advice to our class for them to help build community within their organizations, within maybe the greater community?
First of all, understanding what your role is as an individual within the community that you're serving, where you're working at. How does it fit into the grand scheme of community? We were just talking during the breakout about, oh gosh, and I'm going to embarrass myself because I don't remember who the young lady was from Holly Ridge. And Holly Ridge serves a lot of special needs people within our community, and it's struggling. I mean, they're not necessarily struggling, but a lot of groups struggle with identifying what their role and their purpose is and coming to a common ground so that we're energizing and using all our resources the best we can. And that takes a lot of leadership, and it takes a lot of ability to listen and wanting to adapt a little bit. I think that one of the things advice I could give is go back to Deidre's comment she made, and I listened to it, and I had to write it down because I thought it was really, really important. Deidre asked the question, are you creating services so people are dependent on you, or are you through authenticity advocating for them to be self-sufficient? And I see a lot of organizations that are doing things to help them, but not to help the community that they're there to serve. And that happens a lot of times in government too. We put these barriers and these hurdles and programs together, but they're not really helping the community that we're here to serve, but it's more self-serving. And sometimes we have to stop and realize that what are we really trying to accomplish, and why are we doing what we're doing? The why, I think, is a big thing to ask all the time. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And does it really have the benefit and meet the goal of our organization while I'm doing it?
That is such a great reminder. And it also shows just how interrelated all of our positive leadership capacities are. Is there anything else that, before we take some questions, that you'd like to add about your work and the sheriff's office work in our community, like building community?
Yeah, I continue doing what you're doing through Leadership Kitsap, and listening to these classes, and I mean, I listened to Gina about authenticity, and I learned something there, and I listened to Karen Vargas and learned about advocacy, and that's what we do all the time. We have to be authentic. People can read us like a book, and if we're not sincere and trusted, like it was someone talked about earlier, if we're not trusted, we get nowhere. We get nothing done, and we just continue to butt heads. Build community relationships. Somebody said earlier, it's all about relationships. Be a lifelong learner, but at the same time, recognize you are a leader in your capacity, whatever you're doing it currently, whatever group you're in, you're already a leader. You wouldn't be here listening to the information you get on and through Leadership Kitsap. And be patient. Don't be in a hurry. I still have things I'm trying to get done. I've been here 36 years, and I still feel like I've got a lot of work to do. But don't be too impatient. Be in a hurry. There's always going to be setbacks. Stuff like COVID is always going to get in the way. Distractions, programs change, goals change, budgets always have an impact on your ability to do what you want. Work on your personal development. Take care of yourself first. If you can't take care of yourself and give yourself the time to learn and to grow and to rest, and be ready and energized to come back and do your job, then you're not going to be able to help the people that you need to help. So you can't be running at 100 miles an hour all the time. You got to take a break once in a while. I would suggest that everybody go back and read pages 141 to 143 in the book, Optimizing the Engagement of Others. It perfectly describes the personal benefits of being a community builder. The more you give, the more you give, the more you get. And I think the more you give to community building, the more your community gives back to you, and the more you grow. And I see that all the time in our job. The more time I spend in the community talking about who we are and what we do, the more relationships we build, the more partnerships and the more support we have. With all the protests and problems that we've seen across our country, we are just getting inundated with thank you cards and gifts and things that people are just coming up and saying, "Hey, thanks for your service." So it's really pays a lot, pays off in the long run. Community versus a place of association. Read that section. We use those terms similar, but we say be an owner, not a renter. We know how if you rent a house, you're not going to take care of it as well as you are if you own it. So when you're in an organization, make sure it's part of who you really are and what you want to do, and recognize your worth, and be an owner in your organization and your own community that you're serving.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, so many great takeaways. I'm going to open it up now to see if anyone has questions for Sheriff Simpson.
Hi, this is Carlita. I do have a few questions. And this question is for both for Gary as well as Harriet, if she's still with us. How has COVID and the challenges from the pandemic impacted your ability to accomplish your community initiatives?
Ladies first, Harriet.
Oh gosh, I love that. COVID has impacted everybody, particularly what I do, because it has actually not allowed us to continue as we had before. And so we have to be really creative and figure out how we can continue to make that impact, even though we're in this pandemic, and also stay safe and healthy. And so it has been a huge impact, especially on a lot of the areas that I serve in, because now everything is Zoom, and you want to touch, you want to talk, you want to hug, and you can't.
Yeah, similar for us too. The thing that's been challenging is that when the COVID rules came out and the regulations, the political expectations for us to enforce these laws got a little bit silly, and some of the conversations we had to have were controversial. We still had our job to do. We still had to answer 911 calls. Our office has been open for months. So it's, in some regards, it's business as usual, but at the same token, it's not business as usual. You have to stop and remember, grab your mask as you leave your office, and you try to get a hold of somebody by phone and they're not in their office. So you have to use a text message or an email to try to communicate. So things have been curtailed, and hurdles have been put in front of us, but we continue to have to do what we need to do. Our protocols on the street is if you don't have to make personal contact with somebody, try to make a phone call contact and try to handle our details in another fashion. And it certainly has made it difficult for us to build those community relationships with people in our community when you can't have physical contact. No one has to have physical contact, but having one-on-one FaceTime, and just like today, these types of presentations are always much more enjoyable and received better when you're in face to face, and you don't have the distractions like somebody eating a beautiful donut while you're trying to make a presentation.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. I'm always interested in how effective leaders are looking at communication during this time. So, like, what are the the communication techniques that you have found to be really successful in kind of reaching through the Zoom screen or reaching through the telephone, or, to kind of replace the one-on-one. And again, I like Carlita. I'm going to take her lead. I'd love to hear from both Gary and Harriet.
Well, I'll take that one first, Harry. We've had a lot of one-on-one phone calls. Sometimes we'll have Zoom phone calls, which kind of make it a little bit more personable. Not always the best way to do it, but we do have meetings in my office. If they're small groups, I do have an office big enough that we're able to socially distance, excuse me, so that we can still have some contact with each other and realize that we're not isolated in our own little cubicles. And so it's difficult, but we try to do what we can to have those interactions be less robotic, if you will, and a little bit more personal. We're all in a people business. We're in a people business, and if you can't have contact with people in a more direct way, it's very, very difficult.
And I agree with Gary. It is a little difficult, but we have to just reach out to each other, whether it be by telephone or by Zoom or Facebook or Messenger. The technology has grown so much that there's many ways that you can reach out to each other. And so I'd say utilize that, always check on people, check on each other, stay in touch. That's important. We just got a message from one of our middle schools. We have 46 girls that want to be on our next Zoom. So that tells you right there that they want to be connected. They want to see each other. They want to see our faces. We want to see their faces. And so I say, please, please, please go the extra mile to reach out to everybody, as many people as you can, because you never know who's sitting there, like on the YouTube said, who's alone and who's doing what. So just reach out to family, to friends, to colleagues. It's important.
And I totally agree with what Harriet says, is to, think about those that you're not seeing because they are isolated. But, the efficiency of having a Zoom meeting has really saved a lot of travel time for going to meetings. But I think another key thing for you to remember when we get out of COVID, and we're going to get out of it at some point, this is a suspension, I think, in our life, is to build those good relationships with people. Harriet and I have known each other for years. And while we haven't seen each other, it's nice to see her face on the Zoom and her voice. I know that because of the relationship that we've had over the years, all I have to do is make a phone call and we are right back to where we were before. And so it's important to have those relationships built and in place well before these types of disasters come into place, so that you don't have to try to build that friendship or that relationship at an inopportune time. And we're in an opportune time now, so it's nice to have that already in place.
Great. Anything else? Anyone else? We have time for one more question. No? All right. Well, it looks like we're at about the end of this. Gary, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time today. And just on a personal note, because with all of COVID, Leadership Kitsap's become more involved with the National Leadership Network at the national level. And there was a conversation about policing. And I just remember that this Leadership Rhode Island that was starting the conversation, and they weren't able to get someone from law enforcement to come on to be part of that conversation, which shocked me, because I think because of the relationships that our sheriff's department has built, it would have been like a phone call, like having you here today. I just always feel that when we have our Law and Justice Day, community building is usually the theme. And so value the values that you've put out into our community on community building and those partnerships. And I think everyone on the call can appreciate that. And thank you. Because like you said, we aren't seeing some of the distrust, and we had a rally for back the blue versus defund. So thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing in our community. And it just makes us a better place to work and live and thrive.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and I appreciate Leadership Kitsap continuing its mission by being creative and having these Zoom presentations, because it means a lot for those that want to continue to build on their foundation of leadership.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer. So everyone, we were thinking about community building, and now you can work on creating that Thrive plan for community building.